the most common types of blunders in chess. That's what we're going to cover today. And we're going to start with super simple beginner level blunders and work our way to the more advanced types of blunders so you can understand your personal blind spots. And right at the end, I'm going to show you how the great Vishy Anand, world champion Vishy Anand, resigned in just 6 moves after blundering right in the opening. Let's get into it. Okay, first type of blunder is just plain and simply not calculating one move further than you should. In this game, Black played knight bd7. This is a queen's gambit declined, and here White quickly calculated that he can win a pawn on d5 because the knight cannot take back without losing that queen on d8. However, let's see what happens. White was shocked when Black played bishop b4 check. That forces White to give the queen, and after the king takes, at the end of the sequence, Black is a knight up. So that shows the importance of don't just calculate 2 or 3 moves ahead and think that's the end of it. Go one move further in your calculations. There might be stuff you're missing. Okay, so that's number 1. Here's another example of not calculating one move further. Black, is obviously trying to put pressure on that d4 pawn and win a pawn. And he calculates that right at the end of the sequence, he's got a back rank mate on c1. So Black goes ahead and starts taking and trading pieces. And he's got a smile on his face thinking, yes, now I am going to sacrifice my queen because it's going to be back rank mate. However, White has the last laugh because after rook e1 takes, that bishop can now drop back to f1. And suddenly, White wins the game because he's got the queen versus the rook. Okay, second type of blunder. These are one of the sneakiest types of blunders and really make for some amazing tactics in games. And they are called intermezzos, which are essentially in-between moves. So in this case, Black thinks, my position's pretty defended. White cannot take that rook. Maybe I want to swing my knight across to e4 or something like that. Maybe put pressure on this e4 pawn, e3 pawn. I'm going to move my queen to h4. And so White thinks, how do I get rid of this weakness and open up my bishop? e4 is the move. What Black missed in this case was after takes, White can go check, check, bishop b3. And that just simply wins the game for White. Black cannot play king h8 because queen f8 is mate. So Black has to play this. And after queen to e7, Black can't really stop White from checkmating him. So bishop b3 was the intermezzo in that case. This example highlights both an intermezzo and missing a sacrifice. So you've got to look out for these tactics. You've got to look for where can my opponent sacrifice a piece and how can the tactics work in my favor or my opponent's favor. So in this case, Black thinks I'm going to put pressure on this e5 knight and plays queen to d6. Can you spot the sacrifice for White that wins the game here? Pause the game if you want. Otherwise, the move is knight takes b5, opening up pressure on this c6 knight. After Black takes the knight, we take Black's knight, bishop takes c6, and not rook takes c6 because the queen takes back, but we go queen to c2. That's the intermezzo, the in-between move. And now Black has to handle that mate threat on h7, and now White wins the piece back and is a pawn up at the end of the sequence. So that's a really great example of, in this case, just looking for ways your opponent can sacrifice pieces. I mean, you should even be calculating, can my opponent play bishop takes h7 in this position? Or should my opponent play queen h5? These are all things you got to calculate. Okay, here's another example of a very, very common type of sacrifice that can be missed. So in this case, black thinks his position's pretty solid and plays b6, trying to get the bishop out and start developing his pieces that way. However, black, maybe because he's a beginner or maybe he hasn't seen this type of sacrifice before, he failed to consider that white has a variety of sacrifices with the knight and with the bishop. And in this case, knight takes f7 wins the game on the spot for white, because once the queen takes the e6 pawn, there's just too much pressure on this diagonal. The queen can defend the rook, but then you go nice and simply knight g5, and there's no real way to stop this. You know, you can try something like knight to d5. Then after queen takes c6, you're attacking the rook, the knight, the other rook. Black's position falls apart. Cool. All right, so now we're getting into slightly more advanced territory. These are the types of blunders where you get your piece trapped and you lose your piece. And this is a specific, very special example of a World Championship match game. This is Boris Spassky as white versus Bobby Fischer as black. And this is game 1 of their World Championship match in 1972, and Fischer just did the craziest thing ever here. He made the mistake of taking black's h2 pawn. And there's pictures of Fischer actually holding his head in disbelief. How did I miscalculate this? How did I get my bishop trapped? Because nice and simply, white plays g3, and now the bishop is stuck. Fischer tries to play h5 to save the bishop, but after the king comes to f3, Fischer gets his king out. Fischer has to give the bishop away. And after several moves, Fischer resigned and Spassky won the game. You don't want to lose your pieces by miscalculating and getting them trapped. In this case, very similarly, white kicks black's knight, and instead of saving his knight a different way, black tries to be sneaky and says, okay, I'm going to trade, check, and when the rook takes back, I'm going to take this pawn on a2. However, again, black did not realize that his piece is going to be trapped there. So you should always look when you're pawn hunting on the edge, or when you're taking that a2 pawn or an h2 pawn. You just got to be careful. It's on the edge of the board, so your piece can get trapped. In this case, bishop to a5 takes away the escape squares for the knight. This is a really common way a bishop can dominate a knight, and black can resign in this position, because if black tries to be sneaky with something like rook b8, what black's trying to do there is, save the knight by going here, takes, and then this would be a back rank mate. What white can do in this case is simply king f1. Black cannot take because of his own back rank issues. So after f6, it's too late. The white king escapes and black is down a piece. And nice and simply, you just kind of have to identify this move. Bishop from c7 to a5 traps the knight. Everything else is just a few, calculating one move further, like we looked at earlier in the video. Okay, now we get into really advanced territory. So this is how, when you get to like 1500 to 2000 level rating, these are the types of blunders you will do. One is just plain and simply underestimating your opponent's attack, not seeing how they can break through, and then losing, getting mated and thinking, holy crap, I didn't see that coming. So this is a specific and special case where white is Anatoly Karpov and black is Viktor Korchnoi. So this is their 1974 candidates match, and here Black, Victor Korchnoi, has decided to go for a Sicilian dragon and attack on the queen side, and white is attacking on the king side. But Korchnoi really underestimated Karpov's attack here, and they traded these dark squared bishops that are typical of a dragon Sicilian, and white just plays g5, threatening to remove the knight from the defense of the h7 square. So here, and then mate the black king. So here, black takes the pawn, and something that Korchnoi might have missed is this powerful move, rook to d5. And again, we're starting to combine a few of these, right? Intermezzos, missing sacrifices. That's a tricky move to find for anyone. The trick here is black cannot take, again, because he gets mated. Queen h7, king e8, queen h8 mate. So black takes back with the rook. And now the knight comes in. And again, we're threatening to take that knight or take the pawn on e7. So the rook comes here, and white is just relentless. I'll just show you how the game finished, just so you can see. e5, bishop takes, e takes, and now we're threatening the whole checkmate situation. And after white takes on h7, queen h8, black resigned, because after king e8, you have this move, knight takes here, check, and it's over. Black is just losing. So that's an example of a few of these points, but ultimately underestimating an opponent's attack, and that was at the highest level. These were the top 2 or 3 players in the world, essentially. So now we're getting into very, very subtle type of blundering territory, and this is, if you watch this far, the next thing I'll show you is how Vishy Anand lost in 6 moves, but very simply, blunders of the positional kind, where you're not giving away a piece, but you are losing positionally. And in this case, black has just played bishop from e7 to f8, missing white's positional idea of d5. And the reason this is so strong is because now black's pieces are completely tied up. And so how the game continued was h6, c4, king h8. Black's trying to create something on the king side, possibly. But after b3, black could probably resign here. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but let's take a look at how much of a pickle black is in. This knight on a5 is completely stuck. So first and foremost, the queen side structure and the center is completely blocked up. So all the pawn play is going to be on the king side, all the attacks and everything. Black's knight is stuck on a5. The only square to go back is b7, but the bishop's on that square. Okay, so we've got to move the bishop back in order to get the knight back. But when the knight's on b7, again, the only square for it to move to is d8. And even then, the only square is f7. So essentially, black's knight is completely out of the game for the rest of the game. This bishop will only serve a defensive purpose along this diagonal. These rooks have nowhere to go, and the queen is stuck. So how the game continued was queen c7, knight f1, rook ad8. White's trying to get his pieces out to the king side. White can take his sweet time here because black has just no moves for his pieces. And after here, you can kind of see the pressure that white is building up. So we're looking at sacrifices now. We're looking at the knights coming in. We're looking at white maybe putting his king on h2 and then moving the rooks through f1 and g1 and all sorts of attacking ideas. And black cannot move his pieces anywhere. He cannot move his pawns anywhere. Black is just waiting in this game to lose. So these are positional blunders that you've got to be aware of. Again, this is super advanced. The first part of the video is probably more relevant to most of you, but as you get more advanced, you want to look for these positional type of ideas where you don't want your pieces to get locked up in closed positions or any other type of position. So you want to play for piece activity, which is why that's so important. All right, so if you've watched this far, I know we've gone quite deep, but this is how Vishy Anand lost in 6 moves. Anand is black, and the Petrov defense was played. Nice and simple. White played knight to c3. By the way, I should say white is a grandmaster called Zapata. Vishy played bishop to f5 on move 5. And after queen e2, Vishy resigned. So this was move 6 for white. Why did Vishy resign? Well, he's going to lose that knight because the knight is pinned. d3 is just going to win the knight. The only way to prevent the pin is to put the queen here. That cuts the pin and defends the knight. But that loses to knight to d5. You're threatening knight to c7, so you kind of have to go d7 as black, and then you're pinned again, and you're going to lose that knight. So as soon as white played queen e2, Vishy resigned. It just shows you everyone's human. We all make blunders. It's part of the game. It's part of the beauty of chess. Don't let blunders discourage you. It's just really important to understand the different types of blunders so that you can essentially try to patch up those blind spots, patch up those holes in your game, blunder less. If you blunder less, you're going to win more games. You win more games, your rating's going to increase, and you're going to feel better about yourself, and you're just going to improve as a player. So there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something out of it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.